Welcome back to the Futurist New Deal. I'm here with USTP officer and my friend in New York, Pavel Ilin. And Pavel was one of the key organizers in the founding of the Russian Transhumanist movement. And he's since become a key organizer here in the United States. And we're going to talk about where transhumanism is going.
Thank you for such a generous introduction, Ben. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to see you again. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Let's do that.
Now we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people about where transhumanism is, how we get things like life extension and other techno-progressive outcomes to everyone. But there's always going to be concerns with the difference between the haves and the have-nots, and this could present us with some kind of digital divide. You have some insights into where you see us now and where this might be going. Tell us what you think about the future of techno-progress as it relates to the digital divide.
First, about what is transhumanism. I think transhumanism is our reflection on technological progress, and it's our attempt to develop ethics of using technology before we develop such technology as AI or nanotechnology. Because as humanity, how usually we work, we develop some technology, we drop a bomb, and then we terrified of the results, and then we divide the ethics based on the terrifying results of the non-ethical using of technology. So I think I joined the transhumanist movement because it's so important to develop the ethics of using this technology, these emerging technologies, because these technologies such as, again, AI, nanotech, biotech, it's so powerful. It could just, if we not use it ethically for common good, it could just destroy everything, all sentient life we know.
Yes. It is a very real risk. We talk about myths from the past about the creation and harnessing of fire, and this is a limited risk. It hurts one person, but things like an artificial superintelligence, things like concerns with extraordinarily advanced technology in the life sciences becoming very low cost, disrupting entire ecosystems. These are existential risks that derive from technology. We have existential risks today that derive from industrial technology, and we have to find ways to address all of these possible concerns. I'd like to shift gears for a moment because there was something else in your biography that I was really fascinated by, which is the founding of Cryorus, cryonics organization, the largest cryonics organization, in fact, in this part of the world. And tell us a little bit about the successes that you've had there. I'd like to talk a little more about cryonics also.
Yeah, the Cryos is a project of the Russian transhumanist movement. So the Cryos was built by transhumanists for transhumanists initially, but now it's for everyone who want to join. And the Cryos was founded in 2005 without any huge investors, without any capital. Initially, all the work was done by volunteers, transhumanists, and like I did a lot of organizing and just to work like very high range of the different work, from painting the walls to organizing the media trip for Discovery channels. It was a great experience, and currently Cryos is very successful cryonics company. I think it's still only company which store the bodies and the brains of the people outside the US. And now they have 89 patients stored, and some number of animals and DNA samples. So it's a very successful story, and I'm glad to be part of it. And yes, it's amazing that it's still there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is an incredible success, and I know any number of people who have a cryonics plan in place. I do not at this point, but in just a few days ago, I did an interview with Ira Pastor, and he has a lot of expertise in different life extension areas, including in this area of reanimation. And some of the things that he said make me very hopeful that not only we can provide the back end of this service to all of these people sooner than I might have imagined a few years ago, but really grow this kind of business. And one more way to ensure that people have access to life extension in the way that I think so many of us want.
Yes, and I want to say that the technology of the preparing the patient for cryopreservation is developed very good. Like
yes.
if you store like in 1760s in first patient of the Cryonic Institute or Alcor, this patient's probably going to need some high level of nanotechnologies and artificial intelligence to restore their personalities,
So the vitrification of today is head and shoulders above what it was in the late 60s when
exactly exactly. And new patients, I think they're not gonna need that advanced nanotech to be restored. So I think it's a very great progress. The humanity, it's not only the cryogenic companies, not cryonics companies, but in general humanity by biotechnology and so on.
Yes, and it's difficult to say whether this the vitrification improvements in vitrification technology that still need to be advanced, or the improvements in reanimation that still need to be advanced. Which of these is a larger concern? But it certainly seems like the advances in vitrification are significant in recent years, and that is very hopeful for this business.
That's true. I am very happy that this progress is going on and still on, and we don't need to wait for centuries to be restored. At least if we preserve properly.
Yes. And I'll say also that a plug for a friend of ours, Rudy Hoffman, wrote a wonderful book, The Affordable Immortal. You can also watch our podcast, and he talks about how to secure these services in a way that is available for anyone who is interested. So if people have an interest in that, there's good resources for securing these services. We talked about the digital divide. We want to find ways to make sure that these are not things for only a select few.
Yes, that's very important to make sure that not only cryonics but all the technology, all the outcome of this emerging technology would be available to everyone, not only for richest people in the world. And it's very important to develop the culture of to not abolish but overcome the tribalism and othering, to include all the people, not only people with money or people with who only speak English, to include all the people in a family of we. So all the not only people but all the sentient being should be we. There's not supposed to be others, any others. We all should take care of each other and share of the slices of the pie of technology's outcomes.
And there's a controversy relatively recently around cryonics. An individual who was found to be a hard right organizer, having been cryonically frozen. And another candidate in this race asked me in a conversation, which was public, if I thought that this was a good thing. And I do not have any great love for hard right politics as an institution, but I also do not see that we should be ever denying people medical services on any flimsy pretext. And I would include this kind of a life extension technology.
I believe that every single life is sacred, and every single life deserves to be saved, regardless of the political opinions, political affiliation, or whatever. We can deal with that when we going to be alive, and we can discuss, we can talk about different approaches for organizing our life when we are alive. But first of all, we have to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Without life, we don't exist. There's nothing.
And I'm a fan of Robin Hanson's book, The Age of M. And this conversation came up a few days ago in talking with Sean Miller, a film producer, and his wife, Naz Khan. We were talking about emulated personalities and how that affects this marketplace of ideas, how it affects all manner of marketplaces, and how it affects techno-optimists. I think that you've mentioned to me some interesting ideas. Tell us a little bit what you see in artificial personhood and emulated personalities. We're making some strides towards things that can very well pass a Turing test, very well engage with human beings. We can expect in a few years beyond that to see advances that would be quite astonishing. What do you think about artificial personhood?
I think we should create life if we can. We should turn the death matter into the sentient matter if we can. So I would encourage to create as many artificial personalities as we can, because we can. By doing that, we create the colleagues, the friends who can help us to improve the world, who can help us to reconsider our place in the universe, who can help us to be better in general. So I think it's important, and we should consider this. It's a big question of where we draw the line. What is saint and what is not? Where does the consciousness start? When is not? I think it's more like a degree. For example, the cat had some percentage of degree of the, for example, human level consciousness, but it's not like just a straight line. You have, you don't. And I think if this artificial people, artificial identities express some level of the consciousness, some cognition, so they should be treated, as sentient beings, and we should recognize in them our, if not fully human level intelligence, but we should recognize in them potential human level or super intelligence. And I think the way we treat this artificial identities now going to reflect on the future super intelligence, because super intelligence is going to learn from this database, from this narrow AIs, and how the Ben Gorsel said that what AI doing now? It's like using for gambling, for the sales, and for the war. So what do you expect to super intelligence to be if you if you use the narrow AIs now for these terrible things? So we should develop this narrow AIs, and we should develop the empathy of the empathetic relations with these narrow AIs. And I think by doing that, we will not necessarily guarantee, but we will improve our chances to have the good super intelligence. And by doing that, we reduce existential risks, and we will prevent potential conflicts between for example, people and the AI, and we will prevent the emergent tribes of the natural humans and the tribe of different AIs, and potentially will prevent this division. At least we reduce the chances of emerging this division.
Very nice. Very nice. And in the course of this election, and the course of making the companion piece to the Transhumanist handbook and also these podcasts, I've been lucky enough to start to talk to people and meet people who are working on projects, not at the level of artificial personhood. We're not quite there yet, but at the level of more robust digital assistants. The digital assistants today, we are moving into a time where we can have a sidekick, a sidekick app, a virtual Ben, a virtual Pavel, who's able to contribute to work product, to interact, to do a lot more than, it would make, it would really make Siri and Alexa look like a momentary child's sleight of hand compared to some real magic, some really good work. These are things that are coming to market. But these things are just mirrors of ourselves. What do you think? Would you like to be using these kind of tools? Do you think that this is a good step for our society? Because personally and sociopolitically, I have a little bit different opinions on this myself.
I personally would use that mirror as a digital immortality tool. So in case I'm not, my body would not survive, a copy of me, some copy of me would save in somewhere, and some version of myself would be restored in the future. And also, I see in this assistance the way of gradual uploading, gradual merging with the future super intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's I would like to. I see that uploading is a more interesting way to build the transhumanist future, and it's more when you upload it, you're more flexible. You're not stuck in this piece of meat. You can play with your carriers as you want. You can you can upload yourself back to the 100 bodies, biological bodies, and another 100 non-biological bodies, and send the non-biological bodies to Mars to build something, and the rest of the 100 will stay on Earth and any part of the planet and interact with other people, and then accumulate all the experience in one place, and that would enrich my personality, and it would be very cool.
Mm-hmm. And Paul Wolfram, a very important computer scientist, has been working on compiling this kind of data for many years of himself, with a mind to doing this sort of thing. And of course, now we are starting to see applications that have some of these capacities as well. But Paul Wolfram, if you're out there, I'd love to interview on this subject. I'll just somebody who's worked for so many years to be doing precisely what you've said would be an interesting interview.
Yeah, I just want to add that now in AI development, we on the stage of the narrow AI. We're very good at that, but we're very far from AGI. I spoke with Peter Voss, who worked on AGI, and he said that it's we really far. We don't really know exactly how to build the actual AGI, general intelligence. I really like the singular to net approach, like build an API of APIs, API of APIs, like building some general intelligence which gonna communicate with different narrow AIs, and somehow through this process some consciousness would emerge. It's like our brain. There's a lot of different modules, and they communicate between each other, and somehow magically our consciousness emerge. So I think it's a promising approach to at least to try in order to build something really conscious, which could understand you, not just to give you the probability based on the data you feed to the system, but it can understand you, and it could interact with you on a human level, human intellectual level.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that we will very soon have advanced algorithms that have this kind of versatility that we would associate with the general intelligence, this kind of agency, and these other qualities. But I tend to think that we will always perhaps be seeing consciousness as more of an abstraction. But I could be wrong. My feeling is that the notion of consciousness is, I think, something a little similar to what you said, an interaction effect between this agency and this intelligence that creatures possess and humans possess to a somewhat higher degree. I think it's a kind of figment of our imagination.
It's also a problem of the language. We use consciousness, mind, qualia, like for different things. First, we should agree on the terms, like what we mean when we say consciousness. Like in Russian culture, it means one. In English-speaking culture, it means another. And we should first agree on the terms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it also comes back to certain kind of broader humanistic notions that seem to be existing also cross-culturally, as you mentioned. They seem to be a cultural universal, an idea that human beings have a soul, and that is a centering of the humanist philosophies. I'm not inclined to believe that, and I think that the pervasiveness of this thinking very much confuses the conversations of this kind. But it is definitely an area where I think we will see some interesting developments. I mentioned that sociopolitically, I'm a little bit different on this than personally. For example, I've found it very concerning in the United States that organizations like Cambridge Analytica and others are able to use rudimentary artificial personalities to manipulate
the troll
elections.
factor in St. Petersburg.
Yes, quite as well. All very real concerns. I think the concerns about what happened in the U.S. were downplayed, and the concerns about maybe what happened in other parts of the world were played up in the U.S. media. But these were all very real concerns. And
and it's really real. Like, no, it's not only concerns. We already have the consequences of this really real technologies, of using non-ethical using of these real technologies.
Yes, and if an institution can go further and house many billions of artificial personalities that are indistinguishable in qualia on the surface from human beings, they could basically flood the market of ideas and institutions, and that we see that in the case of Cambridge Analytica to a small degree, and it's why I think we have to have this discussion as well when we are talking about the promise of artificial personhood, the peril of manipulation by it from institutions particularly, but none of us has the crystal ball.
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. There's predictive algorithms are getting a little better as well. That's another feature of a superintelligence. Some people are able to see a few more things coming, but not always so much.
Yes. Plus, I think if we develop real AGI, which would have their own agency, their own cognition process, it's gonna be really hard to manipulate it. Like just to direct it to the certain goal. AGI would ask the question like, "What the hell? You want me to manipulate some election?" Like I check in Wikipedia on history of ethics, and it's kind of not good thing to do. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the degree of consciousness and intelligence of the potential digital life.
And you mentioned earlier Ben Goertzel's concerns about these narrow intelligences that exist being the product of some perverse business cultures or troubling arenas. And that ties very much into that notion that you mentioned. A human being is a product of their environment. It's not very difficult to raise a child to be a sociopath. Similarly, I can imagine it's not very difficult through similar errors to raise an AI to be somewhat sociopathic. So we have to be very mindful of
we
those.
have to be very mindful and thoughtful about environment, digital environment, cultural environment. Yeah, you're right. It's the same as with the people, the humans. If you raise the children in a very abusive, terrible environment, well, you're not. It's not going to be surprised that if we get some sociopath and very aggressive and passive aggressive person. And if you nurture your child with love, compassion, and empathy, then it's going to be different results.
Yes.
So I think the same methodology, we should apply the same methodology to AIs as we apply to the raising the kids and the developing our culture.
And this idea of a true versatility of an advanced algorithm, a true autonomy of an advanced algorithm, it's hard to see what a timeline for that might be. But we do have prototypes that would be similar force multipliers that are coming to market for human beings. Any number of products along the lines of Neuralase. I've done 2 interviews now with another very talented computer scientist, Irai Ozkarol, and a person who is known to this party, but very, very, very talented man. And in the pre-interview for one of these panels, I said to him, what do you think about this force multiplier in the form of Neuralase? There's things that you want to be doing that you can't do because of the limitations of advanced algorithms. Will you take the plunge and get this? And he says, might wait a little while, but I'm ready to take that plunge. Like you said, building out a true sidekick, building out other kinds of operational things that we can't do today. This might allow a small group of people to be doing some truly incredible things. What do you think about something like Neuralase? Will you try it? Do you think it's a positive for the community?
I think it's a good way of uploading, good technology for uploading. I think it's not there yet to using on the market. But I look forward to Elon Musk's Neuralink project, and I saw their last presentation, and they present very impressive results. How they interact with the brain on nano level. Yeah, so I look forward to it, and yeah, it would be, for me, it would be the way of life extension and extension of life extension and extension of myself.
Yes, and it's really fascinating because in the course of our conversation we've talked about artificial personhood, which is a direct parallel to this concept of upgrading of other entities, other living creatures, for example. And you saw in the course of this presentation, it was revealed that there is another simian, a monkey, rather, who has this Neuralase. So this monkey is effectively an uplifted creature. He can do things on a computer with these 10,000 plus micro-threaded neurons connected to a machine that I cannot do right now.
I think if they connect the elephant brain, it's going to be even better than monkey.
Tell us. How so?
Well, I mean, in nature, there's not only primates, not only monkeys are intelligent. For example, the elephants, the dolphins, even the cows, they're intelligent. They have a perspective of the future. They have a notion of the friendships. They have this abstract things which humans usually took only for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they're intelligent, and if we connect them to if we uplift these animals, well, we're gonna see very interesting results. Maybe even better than with monkeys.
Mm-hmm. And certainly we could expect to see interesting results in the concepts of the way that rights are granted in our society, in a similar way to our discussion with artificial personalities. If we're able to effectively communicate with almost every living creature in a real way, and understand and model their experience in a very real way, that changes a lot of facets of our society where most people are meat eaters. That might change. It will certainly affect the way that we approach ecological preservation more generally. I would imagine it's a really kind of a fascinating and exciting prospect.
Yeah, that's why we talk about transhumanism. It's mean trans of the humanism, like going beyond the current matter of affairs, going beyond this anthropocentric culture. So include not only humans, which we still struggling to include all the humans in our family, but also include all things in life, biological based, non-biological based, everything which can think, which have a consciousness, should be considered as a living being, and it should have all the rights which human have, and it should be like our guys.
And I mentioned what I perceive to be a failing in this a cross-cultural monolith, the idea that human beings have a soul. And I'll expand on that for a moment because it relates directly to this notion. By placing value on life to a much higher degree, we start to value our own lives to a higher degree. I think that we use the soul as kind of an excuse not to pursue things like a life extension. I think in some ways, whether it is an intentional thing or not, confused notions are effectively using society's scarce resources. People are more concerned in many cases with what happens to their soul after they die than they are concerned with preserving their bodily self in ways that are becoming increasingly possible in the area of super longevity. So I think that some of these questions about a better understanding qualia, a better understanding, being a little more honest with ourselves on some of these points would also help elevate us as a species and as transhumanists.
Yes, I really like that you said that the way we treat other beings, our living beings, it's reflect how we treat ourselves. It's remind me the Peter Singer philosophy of the animal rights. That like it's we should consider other living beings as the beings which deserve to be treated as humans, and the way we treat animals, and also the way we treat other like minorities, which was oppressed in the past and still oppressed now within human culture. It's the way we treat everyone.
Yes,
For example, yes, and yes,
and civil rights are not pie. One group having their civil rights protected does not mean that other groups are going to have fewer civil rights. Exactly. It's not a zero sum. It's not a zero sum thing where it does bear repeating also that
I think now it's zero sum, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah. That thinking is itself troublesome and a part of our society as well, and it affects many things. Not merely civil rights, but many other issues that would relate to human misery in the marketplace
Yes,
as
and
well.
it's really concerned me because our culture is very conservative.
Mm,
For example, if you can see how hard culture tried to include the, for example, transgender people into the hours,
mm,
into the like people, uh, it's still struggle,
mm,
and it's just a small, at least for me, it's just a small modification of the small morphological modification,
mm, mm,
and if we not change this, the way we can thinking about other living beings,
mm.
uh, I terrified how through what struggle, through what clashes gonna go through in the future if we're not gonna change anything.
Yes, yes, yes. No, it is extremely concerning. You know, I mentioned this a few times recently to a few different people. Have had the good fortune of speaking to a lot of people recently, learning a lot more about a lot of people recently, and had a pretty good assessment of this prior to this time. So coming in contact with hundreds of people who believe that artificial intelligence and advanced algorithms are reaching a takeoff point, and that point might be coming in approximately 25, 35 years, something like this. And that is effectively a singularity experience that people believe in. I have a little bit, some differing ideas from some of those people on this. But the point being that all of these people who believe that AI is going to eat the world, I believe, what was it, Eric Drexler who said that? Um, yes. I should have made a note of that quote before I tried that one. But all of these people who believe that AI is going to eat the world, but there's there's mini singularitarian effects that we can see that would be a lot simpler, so presumably a lot sooner, like e-governance effects, full automation and algocracy effects. That's a much lower benchmark to be met. But most of these people, they won't talk about that in the way that they talk about AI takeoff. And I think it relates to these nationalist notions. You mentioned disdain for transgender people. I think it relates to all of us have some kind of ideological baggage. And it's hard to get people aligned on all of these. It's hard to get people to have no ideology.
Well, we look at the world through the Platonic cave, so
Mm,
we cannot just cut off all our background, all the cultural environment which we emerged from. So it's and I mean we were develop our identities within the national states, and some national states teach us to be the patriotic, to just this particular part of land, and hate other part of land, and it's hard to get out from this cave.
mm, mm, mm.
But I think as we have a consciousness, we have a ability to critically think about ourselves, to reconsider our values, despite whatever it was pre-installed into our brains by the culture and propaganda. Uh, so we should evolve. We should go beyond that,
Mm, mm,
beyond the default settings.
mm, mm, mm. And we talked about some different kinds of force multipliers, some things that might allow us to be evolving, allow us to be undertaking projects on beyond a global scale, near Earth development, and so forth. Now, many people, and it's very hard to just ignore those people, they say that these social conservatives, folks that we've mentioned, they're entitled to feel this way. They're entitled to preserve a world as they understand it. So as we have these force multipliers and greater resources at our disposal, it's a driving force for, again, always talking about Elon Musk. It's a driving force for why someone like Elon Musk wants to be traveling to Mars, why people want to work on projects like a space elevator type project, or near Earth industrialization and development beyond that. Do you think that ultimately transhumanists will have to separate and leave the ordinary humanist social conservative culture behind?
I mean, it's possible, but I would like to avoid this scenario, to division between transhumanists and non-transhumanists, and division within transhumanist movement between people who wanna just focus on life extension and people who wanna focus on uploading and singularity. So I mean, it's still the same question to overcome tribalism and othering, to learn to have a dialogue with the people who have a different perspective, different picture of the future and present. So, and only through this dialogue we can clear first we can clear out the biases. So we can let people know that I'm standing for that and that and that, and they standing for that and that and that, and because we live in a mythology, like we imagine that this Illuminati wanna take over something, and this people from the south, they wanna take something also, and first we wanna clear out the data. We should make sure, we should be confident in what we know about the intentions of other people, and other people should be confident about our intentions. And through clear up the biases and through dialogue, I believe we can reach some mediation, some understanding, some middle path, which gonna be okay with everyone. So this is my vision of the avoiding the social conflicts. Not avoiding. We're not gonna avoid it, but to work through it.
Well, I think that some of these notions are not as controversial as people might suppose. They're merely unproven on the public stage, and so we, as they become more demonstrated, they will become more embraced. It's why I feel that even though I have a personal preoccupation with advanced algorithms, that I feel that for our organization, an interest in setting the stage for a longevity escape velocity, a universal longevity escape velocity, which is a bare minimum, in my view, of the kind of due diligence that we would need to do to prevent extreme inequality between these particular camps. Speaking of course, haves and have-nots in this kind of thing. I think that it's also the least controversial of notions among many of these, or some of the least. Do you have some thoughts on a life extension? This organization's messaging about universal longevity escape velocity has been criticized a little bit from other candidates recently on this.
I think life extension is foundation for transhumanism. It's less, as you said, I agree with you, it's less controversial. It has a less future shock level, so more people, you can attract more people to the movement through life extension. So I think it's a great point to start conversation with people. And the agent escape velocity, yes, it's we don't have a certain point in history in the future that we should survive only till 2045, and then gonna be singularity and everybody gonna be happy. I mean, singularity is kind of mythological point. So we don't know when we develop super intelligent, which allow us to upload our minds safely and properly. So we don't know how long we should live till the certain point. So we have to do with our bodies. We have to do something with our bodies now. Starting with doing the exercises, taking the vitamins, and as the new therapies, the anti-aging therapy is going to be on the market. We should use them to increase our lifespan even more, and then even more with new therapies, so we can survive as long as we need it to the point when we don't really need to take care about aging.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. You know, it brings to mind things in life extension technology at its earliest inception. Some of this occurring in Russia 100 years ago with head transplantation. This came up into a talk with Ira Pastor. The technology has thankfully advanced beyond some of these more grotesque possibilities. We've kind of leapfrogged above this. And part of that is very much a resistance. If people were effectively able to do some of this 100 years ago, we could presume that we could have all been doing it maybe 40 or 50 years ago had we had the interest in it. But it is a very troubling sort of thing to do. But I am more interested in the SENS approach than the mind uploading approach for me personally to something akin to an immortality, something akin to a life extension, and so sometimes body's a little bit messier. Do you have feelings? Do you have feelings about fixing things for yourself or for others? Where do you see those two fields in your view? Which do you like?
I like both of them because I like mind uploading as the point when you don't have to care about aging, when you can play with your careers as you like. But I still stuck in this body. I mean, I live with that. I cannot escape now. So I interested in sense also because I need to survive. Like I need to live. Without living, I'm not exist, and I can upload myself, and I can do anything. So I interested in both directions, in sense as a more applied right now, not right, even if not right now, but in a foreseeable future. And I interested in my mind uploading AI as for the future.
Yes, yes, and it is a bit
So,
more.
yeah, I can see controversial here.
Yeah.
So it's just different the horizon of planning. You need sense right now and for several 40, 60 years, and you need or you want mind uploading in the future, but it depends on your aesthetics preferences and your philosophical preference. What's like, and your identity preference? Do you wanna? Because I'm pretty sure big portion of population wanna be immortal within biological body, within human biological body, and it should be available to people to stay in good condition as a human, as a Homo sapiens model, as long as they can, as long as they want. So I can see the controversial. It's just different, first different planning horizon and different aesthetics.
Yeah, I know quite a few people in this community who would tend to have a preference for their physical form. I think people might move beyond that again as these become proven, more proven possibilities. But I don't know too many people who are the opposite, who only want digital uploading but don't want life extension. But again, that is maybe just because we have more fleshed out prototypes for the life extension at this point. Yeah, it's really interesting. We were talking about the sidekick set of ideas. We were talking about the Neuralase set of ideas. In this advanced algorithm framework, where we are seeing some takeoffs, we could start to be running things like the theorized simulation of our own universe. We could start to be running things of this kind of our own creation. Do you feel that this is a good thing for human beings? A lot of the things that we've talked about, they bring to mind an awful lot of confusion about who we are and what we should be doing. Do you feel? Do you see any downsides to some of these things?
I really like ideas of building simulation. I think the simulation is a way you tell in the narrative,
Mm,
and all culture, or for now it's only human culture. It's a narrative. It's a way we express who we are, what the hell is going on around, and where we're going. And so simulation and like all the culture emerge through building through telling this narrative. All arts emerge from the ancient Greek theater to I don't know, computer games. It's all the same. The expressing the same narrative.
mm, mm,
So simulation is gonna be another way to expressing the narrative,
mm,
whatever it is, whatever the settings you apply for simulations.
mm, mm,
And I think it's gonna be great. And what else we're gonna do among the stars?
mm, mm, mm,
Gonna turn it into the culture.
mm, mm. Yes, and some people sometimes criticized this notion that history has this progressive quality. That they say that is an illusion. But certainly, when we look at the networked world, the force multipliers in emerging culture and the things that we're able to do because we now have this nascent new sphere, this low level connectivity, but still far more connectivity than any previous generation has experienced. We are able to be doing a lot more things, and that gives me hope for all of these things. It's the main reason that I became interested in futurism studies was life extension, and I see that like you said, that story, that narrative is something that we can try to bring to the table to bring people into the 21st century in a real way, give them better lives than they might have otherwise had. It's a very pleasing time, I think, for us to be alive.
I agree. There was no point in history of the humanity, and there was most peaceful and with more opportunities, with more opportunities available for vast amount of the number of people. And I not agree that the history of the culture has the only way of development,
Mm,
only progressive way. I think it's more complicated.
mm,
Because, for
mm,
example, if you look at the China history in medieval China, or medieval for Europeans, in medieval China, it was on the level of industrial revolution
mm,
in European metrics,
mm,
but it did not happen how it happened in Europe,
mm,
and it's not because something like was wrong with China.
mm,
It just different cultures, different way of telling the narratives.
mm, mm,
But I agree that there is trends in a big history of the it's big history, the subject of the history. It's both evolving of matter, and we can see how extropy growing through the history. We can see through the soup of subatomic particles, stars emerge. It's kind of simple objects. Then planets emerge, also kind of simple objects. Then the biological evolution, it's much more complex than stars and planets. And then the cultural evolution,
mm,
which much more complex than biological. It's arguable, but I think it's much more complex and much more diverse.
mm,
And we can see acceleration in different stage of this development.
mm,
Like stars were development for a billion years, the biology development for 100 million,
mm,
and culture it's only 10, 20,000.
mm, mm,
So we
mm,
can see this acceleration trend of the growing extropy.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, and
So we can
yeah,
assume that. Yeah.
no,
Sorry.
so no, I did. I was just going to say that those points in prehistory where we had atavistic effects, drops. They predated a few key things, which is a large human population size, effective universal literacy, and the durability of cultural and institutional properties. These are the things that kind of allowed us to have a truly technological society, I believe. And in thinking about that large population size, it brings back this idea of creatures being uplifted. It brings back this idea of artificial personhood. By having an even larger number of influencers in that sphere, we could see even greater.
It's going to be even richer.
Yes.
The more players on a playground, more players allow more interaction, allow more different connections, and it's going to be more interesting results. It's like if you work alone, like you stuck within your own mindset, and that's it. Like your outcome of your work not gonna be very rich, even if you're super genius. But if you work with 100 people and you interact, we exchange ideas, you can see different perspectives, you can see different cognitive patterns, and you can enrich your cognition, your thinking. You can be smarter you can become smarter by interacting with other people from different part of culture. So I think it's important to increase amount of people by through education, through reducing the income inequality, to allow people to play in this market of the ideas, of the technologies. So yes, I totally agree with you.
Yes. And when I think of this concern, I think of the feral Einstein, the feral child, someone who is raised rough in the woods, might have a natural capacity to become a great creator or doer of deeds, but if they don't have access to the kind of resources, or the kind of interactions that would set the stage for that, the feral Einstein is no Einstein.
Exactly. Yes. If you see the history of the scientific revolution, there's only the male names. It's not because something wrong with women, because the woman doesn't have access to the education and doesn't have the social status that allow them to express to first form ideas and express the ideas.
Yeah, and it's a very real sense in which even though a fair portion of the world is developed, even though extreme deprivation in the form of not having potable water and not having food has dropped precipitously since the advent of the networked world, and continues to drop, we hope. But there's a very real sense in which we're not doing that fine service to most of the people on Earth. We're not giving them the access to be that truly great humanist or transhumanist, and it's why I've been criticized for this in the crafting of the Futurist New Deal on a few points, including simply building upon the founder of this party, Zoltan Istvan's federal land dividend with this basic income. But even if it is a stopgap measure, a basic income, even if it's only necessary for 10 or 15 or 20 years as we reach full automation, the good things that we would be doing for all of those people who are not being served and not able to live to their full potential, I think it's well worth doing to provide this level of providence to our people.
Yeah, the problem, when you have a low income or non-income at all, the problem that you don't have access to time and to educate yourself, to like read books, to take courses. Like, I was working in a bakery for minimum wage, and after 12 hours shift, I don't have any energy or desire to, read the book about artificial intelligence. I just want to go to sleep. And the problem with the low income population, that you can escape it. You just work to pay the rent, to pay the food, and that's it. You don't have any like savings, and most important, you don't have the like this. You can't form the strategy. If you not go to university before, you don't have this methodological tools which help you to manage money, to form the strategy, to plan your life ahead, and you don't have a really vision of the future to which you would strive to. So I think that through basic income, most important, we will give access people to time, and a time non-scarcity time, because if you're not employed, you have time, but what you think about is food, rent, the same, like how to survive. You don't think about bright future or whatever. So I think this game changer, basic income, it's game changer. It's not free money, it's liberation of people. And I think we were wrong when, not we, but some people were wrong when they said, oh, it's free money, we're just going to raise the lazy population, which not going to do anything. This is not true. I mean, if you have access to all this, to education, and you don't have to care about some basic needs, like, what are you going to do? You're going to develop yourself in one way or another.
Yes, and it is so critical. It is so critical that, again, we kind of move beyond a zero-sum thinking, beyond and I do believe in even just a few short years, we will look back at these institutions that we all accept as an ordinary part of life around work for someone else, in the way that we look at barbaric institutions of the past, chattel slavery and other horrific practices. I think with that lens of a more post-industrial society, a more fully automated society, we will begin to see these institutions in those ways as well. And I hope that
I look forward to it. I consider it as a barbaric and outdated, and I'm look forward to become a culture universal, to consider this things like working for your life as something like part of a terrible history.
Yes. There are candidates in this race who are campaigning on quite the opposite. They're campaigning on austerity platforms, too, in particular. I wonder if these people have the pedigree or the ideas to be calling themselves techno-optimists. But we see in this race a lot of people joining the party just to run in this election. Basically, I think Rachel and myself may be the only two people who were members of the party in this election. I could be mistaken on that, but it's going to be an interesting debate coming up in a week. I hope people will check that out.
I would like not to comment any other candidates. As a party official, I would hold myself from the giving the marks to any candidate. So we'll see. The debate will shows the true nature of every candidate, and people will vote, and people will decide who is who.
Yes, and it is going to be an exciting finale to our primary election cycle. I'm certain. I'm looking forward to every moment of it.
Yes, I'm so excited now. It's so many candidates. Because when it was only 3 people, it was kind of not that diverse. It was diverse, but only 3 voices only 3 initial voices. I think it's not enough to express all the voices of the community. because community it's very diverse, and there's lots of different images of the future, and I'm glad that we have so many people, and I hope we're gonna have. I'm confident that we're gonna have terrific debates.
Yes, yes, and I feel the same way. And that diversity is it is extremely important. It is important to consider other people's ideas and be bringing new ideas to that marketplace of ideas. And I have problems on an institutional level with some kind of ideas. I think some kind of ideas can be disproven, but that doesn't mean that the people who are willing to put themselves out there to describe those ideas are themselves villains. They shouldn't be denied chronics or this or that, so long as they are not espousing political violence or any kind of horrors. Then they are. I think that they are well within
Yeah. I think it's very important to separate the ideas and ideas carrier, because if we not do that, we will blame the person, not the ideological platform the person defended. And I think it's very important. And if we're not gonna separate it, we will alienate the people from the community, from the party. We will blame, this guy with the low future shock level, not good transhumanist. No, I think through dialogue we will first we will prove our perspective, our ideas, our the image of the future, and we will improve theirs.
Yes.
It's very important to distinguish these two things.
Yes. I have another question about emerging culture for transhumanists. It relates a little bit to maybe your impressions of the United States and also of Russia. A gentleman who I've interviewed a few times now, Lincoln Cannon, we were on a panel together. And this is a gentleman who I consider to have a very reasonable political agenda, center left or left agenda, or however you would describe it, a reasonable worldview to my thinking. But he expressed an interest to some degree in this panel of a planned community that would be sort of a low impact life extension theocracy. A religious community for Mormon life extensionists, and I here in the United States, there's a lot of people who have these kind of leanings, maybe in a more dangerous way, a dramatically more dangerous way than those espoused by Lincoln Cannon. You see some of that in your country, perhaps as well. There's a certain level of religiosity that is blended with other institutions. Would you care to speak to that as far as life extension, or as far as the healthy mindedness of these impulses?
Well, in Russia, it's different story. It's as you know, Soviet Union was a secular state, and this tradition is very strong in current Russia. But Russian Orthodox Church is very powerful, and it's so interconnected with the government now. And it's so corrupt. So they don't pay taxes. They take so much money from the taxpayers' money, and they support all this war-like propaganda. But I think by doing that, they discredit the concept of religion itself, and people. After Soviet Union collapsed, there was a spike of the interest to religion, of different religion, and even to like magic, occult stuff. But now people get more. People look forward more towards the secular values, and like from my personal perspective, from my personal experience, like if someone goes to church every day, or not even every Sunday, people would think about the person like something wrong with him, something like he should be be careful with this guy.
Mhm.
So
So,
yes, I
the,
think we should be very careful with the religion, and I think we should promote the secular values, uh, at least on the level when we make decisions. Like
yes,
we should make a decision based on data, based on the like value of human life, not on some old 2,000 years old ancient book from ancient Judea.
yes, yes, and it's really interesting because we started this talk about narrative and how a narrative crafts a civilization and all of our techno-futurist aims. And this narrative, Lincoln Cannon mentioned this, many others mentioned this. Faith is a narrative, and maybe we can imagine other narratives that we would find more appealing. And certainly, I believe in the networked world, this faith is evolving into something a little less confusing, maybe a little more of a cultural value than a metaphysical value. I should hope so. In much of the world, outside of a few areas, a lot of religious folks in the developed world would be described as post-religious. Many religious folks in Europe would be described as post-Christians. You could say this of Jewish people in the United States to a very similar degree. This is it's not a lost cause, I think, in thinking about faith, but
yeah, I would like to defend the religion a little bit. I think the religion, it's like historical way of understanding the universe, the world. It's like we go through the mythology, magic, then mythology, then religion, and then we came to a like secular scientific understanding of the universe. So it's nothing. Religion, it's like it's not a bad thing. It's just a way of understanding the world and the place in yourself, looking for your place in the world. So there's nothing like it's not any religion should be claimed as bad, like any.
Yeah.
And for example, non-Christian religion, especially because we like religion, we live in this Eurocentric world which was formed as a Christian. But for example, Islamic culture makes so much for technological progress. They preserve all the ancient the knowledge from ancient Greece, and then Europeans reopened this the knowledge from the Europe through Islamic world, and the level of technological development in Baghdad and in the so to say medieval Islamic culture was so high. Europeans was so envied. That's why they started these crusades to capture the wealth which Islamic culture produced through technologies. You would be surprised, but you might be surprised. But in medieval Islamic culture, they had the automatons like robots musicians like, and it's you can I can imagine how people like came to that without electricity, without like nothing, just with the mechanical way of transfer the motion. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's based on the religion, based on the value of one of the value of Islam, like its value of knowledge. Knowledge is like great in Islam. So it's just one example of how religion can help technological progress. So
Yes.
we shouldn't annihilate people from the transhumanist movement or from like sentient being movement just because the people are religious. So it's just a way to look at the world.
Yes, I think
as long as nobody like kill anyone, and as long as there's no violence and suffering, so
yes,
everyone welcome.
I do agree with that assessment, and not alienating individuals, not ostracizing individuals for these things is paramount. But I do think it's a little bit apples to oranges. You know, we talked about the the advent of universal literacy, the advent of a few other features that allowed us to become a more technologist society. I'll only say that I do feel that religious literalism, and not every faith is uniform on this, but religious literalism, not on a personal level, but on an institutional level, it does tend to devolve into theocracy as a matter of course. You get people together who believe in a metaphysical directive from a book, and they start to try to organize institutions around that. It can get a little messy. And
yes, I agree. I stand for the secular values. I stand for a scientific approach. Through scientific method, we can cure the diseases much better than through prayers and reading the religious books. So we just know that. We have a vast amount of data confirming that fact, that better to work with the scientific method and in science, like in something we build, than read the book, 2,000 years old book. Like, yes, you can build a social construction based on religion, but you can't build the technologies based on religion. You can build like buildings, or you can build. You can improve the human condition through technology with religion. But I agree, it's a threat for technological development. I mean, the threat that religion could not take over, but influence the some decision-making process. For example, if you can see you can see you can look at the current bioethics. It's not necessarily bioethics, but in most part, it's they just use the word bioethics, but most part it's representative conservative religious values.
Right. It's some social conservative ideas have been grandfathered in from traditions. They haven't really been considered. They're just accepted because of this historicity. That's a troubling thing for life extensionists when some faiths do tend to be skeptical of these prospects or those things from an ethical perspective. Another thing that we mentioned in the course of that earlier discussion was the simple growth of the human population being a feature of a certain kind of takeoff. And I'm reminded of a thought experiment in that context. And I don't know if it's a good thought experiment, but an idea that a small population on Earth achieving technological sophistication, let's say 7 million people instead of 7 billion people, developing artificial intelligence and automation and life extension prospects, that it would be more manageable, just in the way that a planned economy is more manageable in Cuba than it would be anywhere else, because it's a city-state, or a relatively planned economy in Singapore. Maybe not of another kind. Maybe not to make this a communist discussion, but I do tend to think call back what we said, where more and more people is really the thing. It's really the thing that's
more and more included people to this process of technological advancement.
Yes.
Not just more people, but more people who include it.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think
free people.
All this talk of the overpopulation, it's and talk about we should have only 1 billion or 7 millions. I think it's very unethical, because we have to get rid of the several billions people, and this means that we not value these people. That it's not we not consider them as our friends, our brothers and sisters, as our colleagues, but just biological material which just we wouldn't want it. I think it's very unethical way of
and I didn't mean
considering the humanity.
I didn't mean to intimate some kind of Malthusian directive in that in saying that. In fact, my feeling on the subject is that this a certain level of human development, and it's well demonstrated in demographics, that industrialized country has at replacement or below replacement birth rates.
Exactly.
So we don't need to concern ourselves overly with this. We have to concern ourselves with other growth issues, but yes.
Yes, I agree with especially with the growth of the education level. Like the growth of the rate of reproduction is going down dramatically. Like there is no if you have a PhD, like you probably doesn't have a time to have a kids. You just dive in this knowledge ocean and you don't care about procreation. Plus, we have this birth control technologies which allow us to have fun and not having kids. So I'm not concerned with overpopulation. But with overpopulation, I can mention the Russian cosmists, which was concerned with overpopulation, and they developed all this the theoretical space exploration technologies to populate the other planets, asteroids, and space. Because the idea, the main idea of the Russian cosmism or the Nikolai Fedorov was to resurrect all ancestors, all the people who ever lived in this reality. And he was thinking, oh, but we need a space for all these people, all these billions people who ever lived. So he inspired his student, the Tsiolkovsky, who was developing all this theoretical technologies, which lead to Soviet space program. So it's very interesting how the attempt to overcome population lead to space exploration. But yes, I think it's not a really a threat for us.
Yeah. And then in contemporary Russia, there's maybe an opposite concern. Because people have a great deal of pride with the idea of a large population or growing population. People have concerns which I think are a little bit of a red herring in a full automation framework, where a large elderly population and a small young person population creates an inability of a society to sustain itself. But that has been a problem to some degree in the course of recent decades. We're not in a full automation framework yet, where those man hours are being replaced by automatons and so forth. So in Russia, there's a fairly popular concern. I understand it's one reason why new young families, mothers who have just given birth in Russia, will receive in the United States only in 2 states. Right now, does anyone get any paid leave to take care of their child? In Russia, rather than only having 3 months paid leave in 2 states, there's some period of a few years that is provided.
Yes, I don't remember exactly how much time, but it's at least 2 years paid leave.
Yes.
Plus, the government gives you some money for first child, then big chunk of money for second, and even bigger for third. But even consider all this like benefits for having kids, the population declining. The rate birth is very low.
Yeah, and I don't see that trend as a bad thing. As I said, the main problem is in one of 20th century economics that I think is being addressed very well in our move towards a post-industrial and more full automation society. But it is certainly, people are within their rights to find ways to try and address these things. And the net result in this case is just a more humane policy in providing this. Something the United States doesn't provide. People think that it's not worthwhile. But most of the developed world has a program far similar to that of Russia in this regard, and in many other regards with respect to social programs. Yes.
Yeah, and back to social programs, I'm surprised that U.S. doesn't have a universal healthcare, because even Russia has it. Like
Yes.
my personal story. I broke my jaw, and I was in hospital for 10 days.
Mm.
And what I have to pay, like for zero
Mm.
for surgery, zero for surgery, zero for stay in hospital, and only what I have to pay for antibiotics, which I get from pharmacy after I was get out from the hospital, and
Mm.
it was just like nothing.
Mm.
Consider all the cost of the whole process.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So I surprised that US doesn't have such a system.
Yes, it hasn't only for limited sectors of the population, and
No, yeah.
that's
In Russia, it's
overkill.
universal.
Yeah,
It's everyone.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
even if you don't have any income, if you're not contributing to this social funds, uh, you actually it's mandatory. You have to have this government healthcare insurance.
Mm, mm, mm. I heard an anecdote recently from a pediatric oncologist in the United States talking about small children having terrible forms of cancer. And such a sad story. And in any other developed country, the anecdote was as follows: if you would think that this doctor's the hardest part of this doctor's job would be dealing with the death of the small child. That would be the hardest thing that they have to do. But this pediatric oncologist in the United States, not in the rest of the developed world, said that the hardest job that they have is to go to a parent and say, you're going to have to be spending many millions of dollars that you do not have, many hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially that you do not have to care for this child. And in a Medicare for all system, that's simply not the case, and that's the standard the world around in the developed world. And it is a travesty that we do not have this.
Yes, I have the similar story. It's not that tragic, but I went to the hospital, not a hospital, clinic, like 2 weeks ago, and there was a woman from California who injured her leg,
Mm.
and she had the Californian insurance, and the hospital in New York, they said you should pay out of pocket full amount right now, or we're not gonna treat you. And she's standing on one leg, like
Mm.
she like jump,
Mm.
and it's like it's terrible. And they said, oh, you're gonna be reimbursed after, but she said, I don't have this like several thousand now to
Mm.
pay you for, like what should I do with this?
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
should I jump back to California?
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, it's just a terrible and unhumane way of manage healthcare.
Mm. 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 And it's a feature of there's many points in the Futurist New Deal for America on my platform for the Transhumanist Party. But one of those, some of those features revolve around what I see as the core of this problem, which is that 80% of American voters, people overwhelmingly support a national public health service, and yet political institutions are so corrupt that they're able to disregard that political will. And this is a problem that derives from many things, including this dark money system that we have that enfranchises bad behavior, that enfranchises corporate misdeeds and mismanagement of this kind, and other institutions that I mentioned in the Futurist New Deal discussions, ALEC and Citizens United. All of these things have created a system where people's votes, even if they vote, don't matter. And we need to get people to understand that and to challenge that and to dismantle that that proto-fascist mechanism that is very powerful in the United States.
Yes, and it's important to dismount it in context of the life extension, because all these therapies going to be provided by these clinics through insurance. And if you like, if I'm gonna be in California with my New York insurance and I need some magic pills to prolong my life for the next 10 years, and I don't have this insurance, I'm going to like die next 2 days. So I'm not gonna get access to it. And like millions of people going to be like annihilated from the life extension technologies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's all this problem is connected to each other, and we have to do something.
Mm-hmm. And it also came up in a few talks recently with different medical professionals and life extension advocates and organizers. I'm thinking of my talk with Ilya Stambler, which is going to be posted very soon, but a few others as well, where Joe Bardeen, it was mentioned, where there is too much of a disconnect between what is traditionally viewed as healthcare and life extension. There's taboos around life extension, and we need to break through that as a society because it's a lot cheaper to do this than it is to do this. The $7 trillion that we spend on effectively many end stage concerns, that can go a lot further if we address ongoing oversight and interventions at an earlier stage. We can become a much less expensive life extensionist than hospice type treatment.
Yeah, that's true, and we need to upgrade the doctors also, because now when you go to a doctor, if you're certain age, the doctor said, "Oh, the your blood pressure for your age is okay. It's like you just age and you just die, and it's fine." But we should say that whatever age, there's optimal blood pressure or whatever parameter in your body, which is optimal for like optimal functioning, and we have to do whatever we can to bring this parameter to optimum, regardless your age. And yeah, I can imagine how much we should work with the like medical industry, with doctors to get rid of this 80 age limit lifespan. To just maintain the optimal the parameters of all your body so you can function well, not limit yourself with certain age.
Yes, and my friend and campaign partner, Kimberly Forsyth, she is working with a government-run incubator in Estonia. They have done an awful lot in that country to be providing greater digitalization, e-services, comprehensive e-government. So now that they're at the point of being able to use this level of digitalization in a public health service. And her proposition to this incubator is to be using personalized medicine, senolytics, data science to effect precisely this. Doing more with less, more oversight and life extension, and less sickness in the long run at a far lower cost. It should be the mandate of every society, and I hope that we can build a society of life extensionists in this way.
Yes, and it's much cheaper to prevent than cure.
Very much so. Yes, Benjamin Franklin, who's often quoted in the United States, he says, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." This very notion. Well, this has been a wonderful chat, Pavel. I don't want to take up your entire evening. I thank you for doing this. Is there anything else that you'd like to say in messaging about the campaign, about the USTP? Would you have a final thought on the subject more broadly of transhumanist politics?
Well, first, for those who are not a member of US Transhumanist Party, please join. It's free and it's available, even if you're not in US, if you're not a resident or whatever. I ask all candidates to follow the reason, not emotions, to be rational, and to be inclusive, to have not arrogant with each other, but to have a dialogue, to have this exchange of ideas, to have this exchange of policies and exchange of thoughts. And through the dialogue, we all can be richer, smarter, more interesting, and more interested in each other. And through dialogue, we can achieve our goals, and we can build a better future.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Pavel. Thank you for doing this. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, sir.
Thanks so much, Ben.
All
I'm
right.
glad to be here.
All right. All right.
Good night.